My dear viewers, my name is Emmanuel Obed Aqua, and I welcome you to this workshop on artistic research. I presume that you have already been taken through a number of information on artistic research, from its meaning, writing the background, problem statements, objectives, review of related literature, and then the epistemologies and designs, as well as the data collection tools. Now, in this presentation, you will be taken through the topic dealing with artistic data and analytical tools for arts-based research. So in this topic, I shall expose you to how you can deal with artistic data, and I shall also highlight the various analytical tools or various ways you can employ to analyze your artistic data. The presentation will be in two parts. Part one will look at what artistic data is. It will look at categories and sources of artistic data and how you can create your artistic data. And then when it comes to the second part, I'll walk you through the various artistic research and then analytical tools and then conclude with how artistic research contributes to knowledge. Now, I hope you are going to enjoy it. So let's begin with what is artistic data. In research, many people describe data using some parameters, such as the source of the data, the paradigm, or even the instrument used for collecting such data, as well as the methodology. Now, if it is about the source, we can have primary data or secondary data. If it is about the paradigm, we have qualitative data or quantitative data, or even mixed methods data. Now, if it is about the instrument for data collection, then we can say observational data, interview data, documentary data, and so on. If it is about the methodology, then we can have historical data, descriptive data, and experimental data. Remember that the ultimate goal of any artistic researcher is to create and write substantially about the creative work. In this regard, your creative source materials are inevitable. The question is, what source materials will be needed as data to create the work and write about it? What elements of designs, what principles of design, what elements of dance, music? You see, and so these materials become your data to work with. The artistic researcher in music would like to collect the sound culture of a particular group of people, but those musical ensembles might have already been recorded and videoed. Such a researcher hands on the video containing the ensemble and sifts out the sonic materials which are relevant for the creative work. He wants to embark on those materials that can be melodies, the harmonies, the structures, the timbres, and other elements which will be necessary for him to create his work. So, an artistic researcher in music composition definitely may have those ones. That is the melodies, I've mentioned the melody structure, timbre, dynamics, and other elements, as well as compositional devices to be able to create the novelty. Those materials become his artistic data. You see, an artistic researcher in the visual arts may want to emulate the stylistic feature of a renowned visual artist. He will therefore have to get those materials that are unique in the works of such a renowned visual artist to get his data for this novelty to be created. Such elements and principles of design conspicuously or which are very conspicuous in the works of the renowned artists will be needed as data for the intended work. Now let's look at an artistic researcher in the theater arts. Such a person would like to create a play or a dance or engage in any technical theater that dovetails into creation of certain artifacts. What materials will be needed for that creative work? Is it stories, cultural philosophies, the experiences of some individuals, and so on? Now, these become his or her data for the play, prose, or poetry, or whatever work that he wants to create. Now, all these data is what we term corpus. They become the corpus in which the artistic researcher lays on for analysis and consequently using them for the creative work that he wants to create. So the quality of the work is dependent on the relevance of the data collected. And so in this regard, artistic research may be defined as the materials and information that form the corpus describing the quantity and the quality of facts which are relevant for creating artifacts in pursuit of artistic knowledge. You see, so the artistic data collected shall always offer a premise and connect to the motive, the terrain, and the context of the research. That means that the artistic data must connect to the research problem, the purpose, and then the objectives, which have been outlined already in the research study. So let me ask you, can you explain the term artistic data? Yes, I know you can. Good. Now, let us look at the categories and sources of artistic data. We have literary materials, which can be used for poetry, prose, drama. We also have sonic materials. Sonic materials actually deal with sounds, music. You may also get performative materials, which may come out of interpretive dance and theater. We can get visual materials like the pictures, the collage, the fibers, the mosaic, and all that. We also have audio visual materials, films, videos. They're all part of audiovisual materials. And in terms of multimedia materials, we can get graphic novels, animations, and all that. So, when it comes to literary works, you can get stories, cultural documentations, existing philosophical writings of people, community behaviors, and so on. It can be histories, it can be photographs, it can be other artifacts which can be harnessed on to create your text for the play, drama, poetry, or whatever you want to do. And when it comes to music, you have musical ensembles and musical scores, audios, you see audiovisuals, multimedia, environmental sounds, wherever you can get a sound in order to create whatever you want to create as an artistic researcher. Now, when it comes to visuals, we have existing artifacts, pictures, paintings, photographs, sculptures. And audiovisual, we have already talked about the films and the videos and all that. These are all categories and sources of data we can have for artistic researchers, especially in the creative arts. What is important is your area of interest, and you will have to select and justify accordingly. So apart from the creative arts, some of such artistic research can take place in the science, home economics, and the physical education, where researchers are practice-based. And remember that The practice of creating or performing is central to artistic research. And this is why we draw our data from artifacts, compositions, productions, literary works, tangible artworks, and all that. One may ask, why do you need data for these creative works when we can create anything imaginatively? The answer is simple. Research deals with objectivity, honesty, and integrity. And so, to avoid subjectivity in the creation of the artifact through imaginative thinking, therefore, it is the data that will determine the objective truth in the construction of the artifact, so that the novelty created does not solely come from the artist's imagination. So, works of art, the artistic actions, the creative processes must link to specific problem and objectives. And this is why the works of arts, the artistic actions, the creative processes must all conform to specific problem and objectives. I hope you are enjoying it. Let us now look at how to create your artistic data. In creating your artistic data, you need to leave a material track in terms of paintings, videos, photographs, audio tapes, texts, objects, sounds, movements, and so on. And so in creating the data, you need the following materials. You need research diary, you need documenting audio, you need visually recording equipment. These tools will help you to create a body of materials, which is your corpus that can be used for the novelty to be created. And of course, you also need to develop a self-created design, which will be your design process or creative process, or to say compositional process, or even choreographic design, usually used for dance performance in the creative artworks. Your creative designs, your creative process, your compositional process, your choreographic designs are very, very important. This process will help you to align your data to the various components of the creative process. And so in most cases, artistic researchers design a conceptual framework from the literature reviewed and used as a creative design process for the construction of the novelty of the artifacts. And so a conceptual framework, creative design process, all are very important. And at this point, I have walked you through what artistic data is, categories and sources of artistic data, as well as how you can create your artistic data. What artistic data is, that's the categories, sources of artistic data, and how to create artistic data. Now, this takes us to the second part of the presentation that deals with the analytical tools in artistic research. One of the significant components of artistic research is how you can analyze your data for synthesis. And remember, how you can render artworks into analytical works and directing an analytical process into an artistic work. We have many ways in which artistic data can be analyzed. We will discuss just a few of them. Let us look at one of them called textual analysis. Any literary work can be analyzed textually to unravel the inherent communicative understanding of the data for the creative work. The purpose of textual analysis is to describe the content, the structure, and then the functions of the messages contained in the text. Let us look at this image. What are its contents? What about the structure? What is the function of the messages it is carrying? Now, answers to these questions dovetail into textual analysis. The data can be stories collected from the field for artistic use, and you can also analyze its textuality by looking at the contents, how it is structured, as well as how the message functions in the text. Okay, now let's move to narrative analysis. What is narrative analysis? The essence of narrative analysis is to identify the kinds of stories told about the research phenomenon and the kinds of stories representing the phenomenon in culture and society. So the narrative can be done structurally with a structural narrative analysis. The analyst looks at the form and not the substance of the text or the artwork. Narrative analysis can also be approached thematically. And in thematic narrative analysis, certain themes are followed in the narrative. And finally, narrative analysis can be approached culturally. And this is where cultural meanings are interpreted in the messages the texts carry. And so in the narrative analysis, all the approaches can be used independently or complementarily. When using the narrative analysis, you need to understand the plot, the character's point of view, setting, theme, conflicts, and style in order to better analyze narratives to determine meanings. Now, let us look at contextual analysis. Contextual analysis goes beyond the textuality and determines the text within the context of its historical and cultural setting. Thus, the social, political, economic, philosophical, religious, and aesthetic conditions that were in place at the time and place when the text was created are all taken into consideration. You see, looking at the same figure we used to explain the textual analysis, analyzing this picture contextually means that apart from its textuality, you will have to determine its meaning, as well as by looking at the social, political, economic, philosophical, religious, and aesthetic conditions that were in place at the time and place when this figure was created. Let's move to semiotic analysis. Semiotic analysis is about how an idea or object communicates meaning. It looks beyond the surface of the message, studying verbal signs as well as visual and auditory ones, thus revealing more deeply the underlying structures of meaning and helping to understand which elements are responsible for creating corresponding artifacts. And this can be done through iconic signs, indexical signs, and symbolic signs. Iconic sign is based on similarity of appearance. It shows the extent to which the meaning of the icon resembles its appearance. Now, indexical signs have a cause and effect relationship between the sign and the meaning of the sign. For instance, you can have a symbol representing smoke, and the interpretation is that it is caused by fire. Meanwhile, smoke does not represent fire itself. Semiotic analysis can also be approached from symbolic point of view in order to interpret the meaning of the symbol. This is where the meaning regarding the symbol is interpreted arbitrarily. The meaning may not have any conventional link. Thus, a symbol representing smoke may be analyzed in terms of the effects of smoking cigarettes or any other substance, and not necessarily its cause and effects. It could be an extended metaphor having other social and cultural values. And so, in using semiotics, there's the need to analyze verbal signs. That is what you see and hear. You have to analyze visual signs. That is what you see. And then finally, you analyze the symbolic message. What is the interpretation of what you see? Now, let us discuss thematic analysis. Thematic analysis as a method is a method that involves description of and the interpretation of the data in the processes of selecting quotes and constructing themes. It is very flexible because you see, it allows you to approach large data sets more easily by sorting them into broad themes. The data itself can determine your themes. Think about many themes your data may generate. Is it on love, hope, cultural alienation, social vices? It can also include other topical issues you can think of. But see, sometimes you may have some preconceived themes you expect to find to reflect in the data based on your theory or existing knowledge. In this case, you will have to align your themes with the relevant data collected. If you go by the data generated themes, your approach is inductive. So that would be inductive thematic analysis. If you go by preconceived themes, your approach becomes deductive. That is deductive thematic analysis. Let us also take a cursory look at visual analysis. Visual analysis is a method of understanding art that focuses on an artwork's visual elements such as color, line, texture, and scale. But in its strictest definition, it is a description and explanation of visual structure for its own sake. In music, it is similar to formal analysis, where the various elements making up the music are analyzed. So these various parameters may be key, the time signature, the melody, the harmony, compositional devices, and others are looked at in formal analysis. In visual analysis, the description and explanation of the visual structure for its own sake is dealt with. And so in this regard, it deals with understanding of the artwork on its visual elements, as I've already mentioned, such as color, line, texture, scale, and so on. One thing we must know is that visual analysis can also be approached by grounded visual pattern analysis. And this is where the strength of dialogic and archaeological approaches is used. While dialogic refers to the use of conversation or shared dialogue to explore the meaning of something, archaeology deals with recovery and analysis of material culture. And so it is the use of pre-existing images to reconstruct underlying meaning structures evident from their visual features. So, photographic artistic data from artifacts, architecture, biofacts, or even ecofacts, sites, and cultural landscapes can be analyzed by grounded visual pattern analysis. Visual discourse analysis is also similar to performative analysis in the performing arts. This type of analysis deals with decoding and understanding the meaning of visuals and what they were intended to represent, as well as how the audience interprets them. In this regard, artistic data collected are exhibited for public comments so that the meaning of the visuals coupled with the interpretation by the audience can help in creating a meaningful artwork. In the performing arts, for instance, data collected from the field can also be displayed in a form of performance. It could be a musical performance, it could be a dance performance, drama, or poetry, to solicit for audience comments in order to illuminate the construction of the work. At this juncture, let's look at video analysis. Video analysis can also be termed as video content analysis, or you can say video content analytics, VCA, or you can say video analytics. And this is the capability of automatically analyzing video to detect and determine temporal and spatial events. It gives the opportunity to the researcher to consider specific trends of events as well as special features of the video, such as 2D, 3D, and so on. Now, video analysis makes it very easy for artistic research in film studies to see the good and bad about movies and quickly make adjustments in the novelty to be created. It allows them to understand how to prioritize certain characters to level up their performance, to generate quality data for quality creative work to be done. The last but not the least, let us talk about aesthetical action research. Aesthetical action research is an action research, but it involves reflexive arts making processes and responses and require both reflection in practice and reflection on practice. This type of analysis exposes the researcher to regular reflections of the work, that is planning, creating or acting, observing, and then reflecting again to continue through the cycle. It works through periods of incubation, verification, and illumination. And so it provides the opportunity for the artistic researcher to be adding ideas to the data being analyzed until the right quantity and quality of the corpus relevant for the creative work are attained. There are many more of the analytical tools we cannot exhaust in this presentation, but what we have talked about are enough to prepare you to analyze your artistic data. Now, let us look at the contributions that artistic research makes to knowledge. Artistic research makes very valuable contributions to knowledge. The evaluation of works of art and the feedback to the artistic creation helps artists to sum up their experience of creation and constantly improve themselves. Indeed, exhibitions and performances after the work has been created provide a form of audience education. And this one goes a long way to make substantial change in the lives of the people. Also, it generates academic discourse through analytical studies of the created works. Once the artifact is created, pragmatic problems, the reason for which the research was carried out, are solved. I hope you have enjoyed the presentation. Thank you for listening.